My story begins when my oldest daughter, I started seeing some changes in her as far as related to her self-esteem, having a lot of talk about self-hate. Unbeknownst to me at the time, there were some risky behaviors already starting with some online behaviors. Also, a really unfortunate relationship formed with somebody who entered her bus. It really, looking back, seems like I went to bed with a spunky, fun-loving 11-year-old and woke up the next day to a kid who was just very dark. And initially I thought, well, this is just what happens, when you turn 12, 13 years old, this normal adolescence of not wanting to listen to your parents and listening to different music. And she had a whole different friend group. And then I will never forget, I got a phone call from the school and they had found a stockpile of pills in her locker. And I felt very disoriented, not knowing really what we were dealing with. Within a short amount of time after that, she had her first suicide attempt with an overdose. I just remember following the ambulance being very disassociated. The years after that would be a lot of her expressing her hopelessness and her wanting to end her life. Many, many attempts, several inpatient stays, partial stays. Sometimes the advice we were given was more damaging than it was helpful. Often people will say that you don't get a handbook for being a parent. Well, there must be a separate special chapter for being a parent to a child who is suffering with mental illness. I would spend the next decade fighting for her, fighting for treatment, fighting for what she needed. And so what I realized very quickly is that I needed to educate myself. When I turned to what support system I had, I was told, why are you letting her run your house? If you had more faith, she would get better. She's doing this for attention. You're the parent, be the parent. And what they didn't know is what was happening behind closed doors. And the amount of fight. And somehow we made it through. And somehow she kept fighting. And just when things started to feel a little bit lighter, her younger sister had a suicide attempt that I did not see coming. I had another child who was suffering. And what's interesting is kids are not the same. The things I would fight for my oldest daughter, I had to fight against for my second daughter. I knew in my gut that it wasn't the type of treatment that she needed. Over some time, medications and therapy did help her sister, and our journey wasn't as long, and it wasn't as much of a crisis. And then just a couple years ago, my son, as an adult, had a suicide attempt and didn't really see that coming. His was more situational, which that happens too. And I remember that feeling in my stomach. I felt that before. I knew something had happened. I think as a mom, your intuition, you just know. And so I made my husband call the police because I didn't think I could bring myself to call. And they shared that, yes, 10:30 that morning, there had been a phone call from that address of somebody who had overdosed. And so he was at the hospital. And it took about a year, but he's definitely come on the other side of it and actually thriving and doing well. And I'm a big believer that if you are given a story, especially one that is so challenging, it can be so painful, it can be so difficult, you need to use that story to lift other people up and help people on the way and put your arm around them and say, let's walk this together. I didn't have that on my journey. And so with the Salus Collective, the goal and the vision is that people who are in a situation like I have been many times would have somebody that would walk with them and they would not be alone.
So my story begins with a 12-year-old. She wanted to talk. My daughter told me that she was suicidal, had already attempted once, and she pulled up her sleeve to show me 15 to 20 scars in various stages of healing from cutting. I was completely overwhelmed. A deer in headlights. I have always prided myself on parenting, and here I was faced with a situation that I knew nothing about. The mom guilt that kicks in is completely overwhelming. How could I not know that my daughter had already attempted? I thought I was supposed to watch her phone, not her arms. At that point, we started trying to find some resources. I didn't know where to begin. We had 3 professionals confirm that this was real. This is not a drill. Her mindset is definitely in a place for self-harm, and she cannot see a future. We were unprepared and had no knowledge of what kinds of resources were available to people who were 12. She ran away from school, and that was a qualifying event to get her into a program. She went for 8 days, and she learned a lot of tools that I couldn't have come up with, I couldn't have helped her with, I never would have known about. I needed some professionals to come and surround us. It takes a village. And I just didn't have that village put together. I didn't know where to turn. I didn't know what to do. Sometimes people don't know how to be supportive. After taking my daughter to a therapy appointment, and yet again at the end of it, being told you need to lock up medications and sharps and extension cords. After hearing all of these, I had a breaking point and fell apart in the car after. So I went to a friend's house, sat in her kitchen, and I sobbed about all the things that had been happening, only for my friend to say, she's just doing this for attention, right? So sometimes when you're reaching out for support yourself, you're not getting it. And myself as a parent, I didn't know how to stay together and be whole so that I can be there for her. It was significant when I found the right team. They found outlets for her, and they lifted her up in ways I could have never imagined, and it all helped so much. If there was a perfect storm of things that happened to get her in this mental health space, there was also this perfect storm of goodness that helped her through it. The problem is that people aren't talking. And so the Salus Collective really does have this initiative of getting the conversation started, because that's how you get the support that you need and you can get the resources that you need. There's just so much goodness that comes from community, the right kind of community.